With love, there is the need to see, well, love for what might seem to be unlovable. You all know that Black Americans for centuries were obliged to laugh when they weren't tickled and to scratch when they didn't itch. This is love. When I think about myself, I almost laugh myself to death. My life has been one great big joke, a dance that's walked, a song that's spoke. I laugh so hard, I nearly choke when I think about myself. 70 years in these folks' world, the child I works for calls me girl. I say, yes, ma'am, for working's sake. I'm too proud to bend and too poor to break, so I laugh until my stomach aches when I think about myself. My folks can make me split my side. I laughed so hard, I nearly died. The tales they tell sound just like lying. They grow the fruit, I eat the rind. I laugh until I start to cry when I think about myself and my folks and the little children. Blue evidence that grins and lies. It shades our cheeks and hides our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Sun. Legally, I go by Lynn Hunter. I'm going to be reading because memory is hard. That was a part of a poem and performance called "The Mask" by Maya Angelou. So basically, I've been referred to as a maximalist, a womanist, a nihilist, an Afrofuturist, a pessimist, an improvisationalist, and an existentialist. My work really expands upon endurance, performance, installation, collage, video art, sound art, and ceramics recently. And with it, I am a breather, a storyteller, a portal opener, mind alterer, fire starter, world builder, empath, and the work usually always involves the social, the embodied, the collaborative, the vulnerable, and the emotional. And feel free to pass those things around. Okay, this is one of my most recent performances from the 2023 Impacts Festival here at SAIC. Go to the next slide. And it was counted as my thesis for the performance program. And here you can kind of see how I've been able to culminate installation, multimedia, and transformations of space into this one project. You could actually go back. Yeah. Thank you. because installation is a really big part of my work, and like immersion within space is an important part of my work. So this is where I kind of look at the camera and I go, I bet you're wondering how I got here. I also make really bad dad jokes. Well, I can tell you that I come from Shirley Bays and Molly Hunter. And actually, my parents are watching this on Zoom, which I did not expect. I also come from these two. They're not going to be comfortable seeing this picture because they're very divorced, but we're celebrating moments in time. And what's important is that I was born. Yeah, okay, but talking about family and particularly memory in my work is very important to me because of how little of it I have and I am able to retain. It was a big reason I got into photography and went to the Maryland Institute College of Art for a BFA in photography. But before I finished the program and after studying abroad in Italy, I kind of had an epiphany that photography wasn't the right medium for me, and quickly started tilting my cup toward performance art. And something both practices had in common for me was the materialization and deconstruction of the gaze. So the gaze has been and is a site of resistance for colonized Black people globally. Subordinates in relations of power learn experientially that there is a critical gaze, one that looks to document, one that is oppositional. In resistance struggle, the power of the dominated to assert agency by claiming and cultivating awareness politicizes looking relations. One learns to look a certain way in order to resist. And this is a quote from Bell Hooks in her book, Black Looks, Race, and Representation. And this kind of starts my gears into thinking about how to reject the typical and how to use systems against themselves. So when I think of the gaze and performance, I also like to trace a sort of performance lineage that goes back even to when things wouldn't be considered performance at all. Although I believe a general philosophy that art in the context of the world infiltrates everyday life and people are always performing within social and political constructs, I also think there are differences between performance and being performative and what it means to be performed on. This is Sahara, known through colonization as Sarah Bartman or Hottentot Venus. She was of the Kwokwe tribe, which are indigenous peoples of Southwest Africa. She was a slave and a wet nurse and got sold to a traveling circus run by scientists, where they put her on main display and exploited her in unimaginable ways. And for a period, she was thought to be the missing link between humans and primates, which we now know to be a form of racism and pseudoscience. She died of poor conditions in France, and parts of her corpse were then preserved by her captors and displayed in a French museum, which I've covered up here because we don't really need to see that, only being returned to South Africa in 2002. This to me is the ultimate example of the extreme power of the gaze, and that depending on who's using it and for what, how it can bring positive or devastating results. And I bring this up often when I'm talking about performance, because no matter like what we're telling ourselves at night, you know, slavery wasn't actually that long ago, and it still exists globally. So how do we understand anti-Blackness or our present social structures without understanding the institution and everlasting effects of slavery? I think when we push events like this back, violence is seen as exceptional. And within the gaze and the spectacle comes what Saidiya Hartman calls a spectacular violence. This is Josephine Baker, a famous performer from St. Louis. And you can see the comparisons here in the flyers between her and Sahara. And Josephine fled to France for more freedom, actually, in comparison to Sahara, who was held captive there. And this really makes me think about how history is always repeating, but somehow it's also transforming. And it talks to me about trends and how Blackness is always at the center of culture and the universe. Josephine Baker had a lot more privileges than Zahora, but still had to navigate the racist South and global war against Black diasporas. She felt so overwhelmed by American racism that she dedicated herself to France, even becoming known as a French artist. And a lot of people don't know that she was a spy for the French government during World War II and was still so involved in the civil rights movement that Coretta Scott King asked her to take over when Martin Luther King was assassinated, although she declined for the sake of her children. And she performed to different extremes and learned how to cultivate and utilize the gaze. This is Renee Cox, an example of an artist that I looked up to a lot in the past, who was dealing with the concept of the gaze and the place of the Black feminine body within Western society. And so when first dabbling in this endless pool of art academia and institution, I began contemplating where I fit in and what it meant for my body to be underrepresented. So this is a photo project from way back when that I worked on in undergrad, and it was an initial example of when I started working with my body to communicate ideas. And these were unedited film photos where I was just working with the sun and shadow and the fence in my backyard. And this is from one of my first performance shows in 2017. I was still working with kind of overt symbolism and literal representations. You can see the heavy influence of Josephine Baker. I was beginning, though, to work with live performance with the nude body and endurance and time-based work. And in Baltimore and at art school during this time, performance art wasn't really a thing, and the idea of putting your body on display as a Black girl or Black femme was still very weird and problematic for people and for my parents. That pushed me into it further. You know, I wanted to challenge why people felt so uncomfortable and investigate what I was reflecting to them. Now I'm going to start moving a little more fluidly through time, which I think we can all learn how to do more of to help reach this idea that I like to talk about called collective consciousness, which I think Anna was also kind of talking about. So I'm a firm believer in non-linear time. I'm also a believer in the power of the gesture. And so the significance of the gesture and its historical importance in Black culture is always in my mind. And I really revere the civil rights movement, the Black liberation movement, and I study them thinking about perception, the body, and presence in accepted or non-accepted spaces, and contradictions between desire and fetishization, secrecy and publicity, and private property in relationship to ownership of another. And I think this all connects to what we call racist capitalism and more broadly colonization. And so this next slide is a little intense, but it's very powerful and I think influential to me in my life. So in June of 1963, Thich Quang Duc, a South Vietnamese monk, performed self-immolation as a form of protest against the persecution of Buddhists by the then Roman Catholic South Vietnamese government. He realized that life extended beyond our material here on Earth, and that a gesture like this could in fact alter time. This happened to be the same year as the height of the civil rights movement in America, and the same day actually that John F. Kennedy publicly acknowledged the need for Black in civil rights, because it had to be publicly acknowledged. A lot of people have actually followed in the footsteps of this monk, even as recently as 2022 here, protesting in front of the US Capitol building for climate change. I also like to look at Pope Ella's work, who is a fellow Chicagoan and performance artist. This piece here illustrates to me the pathway of historical appropriation in performance art and the conversation between the small versus the grand gesture. Sorry, this is Sandra Bland, and I'm not gonna cry. And Sandra Bland was 28 years old when she was found dead in a jail cell due to police misconduct. Turning 28 this year makes this event that I've been carrying around for almost a decade dig a little deeper. The younger me remembers seeing my mother or sister in Sandra, and now I so clearly see myself. And when Sandra was killed by the system, I really started to feel what people say, like death knocking on my doorstep. And so around 2015, also, Freddie Gray was murdered by Baltimore police. And after that happened, the Baltimore uprisings started, which were very influential to me and my practice. The next slide is some of the documentary photography from the uprising. This is also around the time I decided to put the camera down and kind of put my body in, not only into like protesting, but into my work, you know. Okay. And if you know my work, I'm sure you've seen or heard me talk about my public burial series titled Grounded. It was really started by this quote from Morgan Parker. Is it possible that in the dark slumbering of their unconscious, the white imagines that the only remedy for fear is death? And this is a quote from her project Towards a New Theory of Negro Propaganda. And so dealing with all this Black death and anti-Blackness, I started to make this endurance work, trying to grapple with questions like, what does fear mean? What does death mean? What does fear of death mean? And how can I embody the death of fear? And older me would discover, you know, it takes love and spirituality and honoring of ancestors. People might, oh, you can go back, sorry. People might think that I'm obsessed with death, but I think I'm equally obsessed with the concept of rebirth, because to me, they are the same and have to be the same in order for the world to make sense. Yeah. Okay, now we're about to go somewhere weird. Currently, I am hopping into a existentialist quantum physics bag, which someone else mentioned. Wow, yes, we're so connected. So with this, you can go to the next one. I'm exploring time, loopholes, black holes, space, time relativity, how it connects to escapism, retreat, portals, science is magic, magic is magic, time looping, history repeating itself, deja vu, ancestor connection, spirituality, outer existence and non-existence. And you can go back and just sit here for a second. I just wanted to say RIP to Stephen Hawking, an actual genius who spent their life proving this stuff that I'm talking to you about and showing you. And so you don't have to think that I'm just like crazy and standing up here. Like there's actual science behind all of this stuff. And it kind of amazes me every day that capitalism has the power to distract us from accessing the beauty of the universe, you know? And so, yeah, and you can go, thank you. And I'm currently, you know, working with the absurd, the abstract. I'm trying to get into fun and play and fluxus and healing and connection. My connection to maroons and maroonage and bodies of water and masses of land. Having to explore fiction and narrative because so much history has been left out of the archives and family conversations. I'm always thinking about Sun Ra's theory that Black people are a myth. I'm thinking about full century world building, the Black community not being monolithic, vulnerability, value of tangible and intangible breath, rebirth, reimagining, remembering, forgetting, collective consciousness, and the survival apparatus, which is a term coined by Maya Angelou. And so, so this is a beautiful diagram by Lynn, who is a fellow SAIC student and is here. And this diagram really like struck a chord with me, and all of the 27 diagrams actually, and it continues to like inspire my thought process. And because I'm often like intentionally trying to like dirty or alter the energy of a space within the white cube or the white institution. And hopefully one day I'll be able to transcend the white cube into the blue expanse and transcend conceptual whiteness altogether. Yeah, so, okay, it's a little weird here. It's hard to talk about my work or to show documentation of my work because it's so much about presence. It's so much about being in the moment, feeling your feelings. And, you know, it's not the same because it's about living in the now and giving full consciousness to the collective space. Yeah. Yeah, we can skip this one. This is a quote. Okay, I remember. I have no idea what time it is. So this is a quote from Bell Hooks. You can take a second to read it. But I wanted to start talking about my current project and the best thing that happened to me when I came here to SAIC, which involved meeting my family, Carissa and Keziah and Jordan, and we were able to form a collective, and I think we can go to the next. Oh, what? Oh, yes, yes, that was. Oh, yes, okay, yes, you're right. You're right. And that's why I need you. Carissa holds me down constantly. Yeah, meeting these people is why I feel like I truly was meant to come to this school. They're always teaching me what love means, what community means, what family means, and what it means to have connection through Black space and Black time. Okay. And I'm just going to show some quick video clips.
Running away from life, I was running away from rejection, I was running away from not being accepted.
I am out of time if anyone wants to ask questions, but I'm gonna also play a video in the background.
We have about 3 minutes. Sorry, Lynn. Any response? Any questions for our friend Sun Lin? Tutsi.
And it was so moving when you shaved your hair and the impact performance, and can you tell us a little bit about what that meant to you and what that experience has been like then once you removed your hair too?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think, impact really symbolized a moment of close for me, but because of everything, like a close is also a beginning and start, so yeah, for me, I felt like I was in this performance, but I was combining a lot of the pieces I had been working on over the past 2 years. And so it was like a climax point, and then I was releasing, all of that work that's been building up and all of those emotions that have been building up with the work. And I think also in a lot of cultures, you shave your hair or get rid of hair when you lose someone. And so my grandmother recently passed away, and that was also a way for me to release some of that energy and kind of just feel new again,
One last response or question?
Great question. I think it becomes different.
Can you touch on how your work is different when brought into your collective versus your solo practice? Oh, okay. That's a great question. I think it becomes different not in a lot of ways, because all of our work is already very similar in the sense that we're talking about a lot of the same things, and we're even using some of the same imagery. But it's different because when we're together, we have each other, I think working alone is very hard, and it can sometimes change how the work comes out, and working with a team is a blessing, and just creates different situations. And like, I'm going into performances with people that I trust, so it also takes a lot of pressure and weight off of me. And also we have to think about how our work is gonna, because I think over the past year we've been really trying to play with this idea of not having like singular performances, and trying to work towards like a truly like merged experience. So that's kind of something we've been working on, and so it becomes different than having to consider the things that are happening around you or before or after you. And yeah, just having more voices, I feel like changes things. Changes, like sometimes we'll be able to suggest things that the rest of us weren't thinking about, that helps elevate things or even simplify things, which I think is really great benefit.
I want to go to the school suspended culture one day. You
You
make
will.
your own
You
school.
will. Grant us, grant us.
It's in the
Just
blue
made that,
stats.
made that happen. Thank you, Lynn.
Wait, am I allowed to ask a question? I just wanted to ask a question, and if you could hand to the audience, please. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask, for my own sanity, could you please raise your hand if you have attended one of my performances and laughed or or cried or no?
We're waiting for the end of the
Okay.
question.
Okay, please raise your hand if you've attended one of my performances and cried or laughed or been overcome by some strong emotion.
I'm bitter. It never affects me.
Okay. Aw, okay, cool. Thank you for
Excuse me, look at these shoes. Yeah. Butterfly. Thank you, Sunlin, thank you, Anna, thank you, Mao, for those beautiful and very considered and very fair page.